So I'm Damian Profancik, and the talk I want to give today is about imposter syndrome, which I think a lot of us feel, we feel like maybe we aren't worthy of where we are in our career. So just a little bit about me. IntegraSec on Twitter. I'm technical director of the iSEC team at Optiv Security. I've been consulting for 21 years. I've been performing offensive testing for the last about 12 years. Work for numerous different consulting firms like SpiderLabs, NCC Group, Lares, IBM X Force Red. Done lots of testing for various types of firms, lots of Fortune 100s and alike. I lead co-lead our local OWASP chapter here in Indianapolis, and help coordinating CircleCityCon here, where I'm speaking today. I've spoken at many large conferences, published tools and CVEs in my career. I don't say any of this to brag. It's not about that. This is to set the stage for what I'm about to talk about today. So, we're here to talk about imposter syndrome, which, as I said, a lot of people feel, especially through coming out of the pandemic. Mental health is a very important topic in our industry, also especially. So that's why I wanted to address this today. So the Oxford Dictionary defines imposter or syndrome as the inability or persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. Unfortunately, about 70% of people, and that's why I feel like it's a relevant topic in our industry and frankly a lot of other industries, 70% of people experience this imposter syndrome at some point in their career. The irony also is that the more successful you get, you start to feel it more because you're achieving more in your career and you're just not confident in what you've got going on. And this especially strikes women, which is also very critical for our industry, because we're trying to do more diversity and more inclusion and bring more women into our industry. Now, there's a number of reasons why we experience this imposter syndrome, so I'm going to try to break those down a little bit. One is the perfectionist, and I would classify myself, I fall into this category. Some reasons why the perfectionist struggles is just like analysis paralysis. You feel like if you can't get it perfect, you can't get it right, you can't do the job correctly. This was really particularly, in reflection. In middle school, I could jump really high and far. I could run really fast. And I wanted to go out for the track in middle school, but I chose not to. Because if I couldn't be the best, I didn't want to do it at all. And I regret that to this day, that I could have done more there. The other thing too is I'm an artist, and in high school I was treasurer and then actually secretary of National Art Honor Society. I went through advanced placement art and basically I exhausted the art classes. But I was really hard on myself, and since high school, I think I've drawn 3 things, just because it does give me some anxiety because I don't do rough drafts. I draw it and, it is what it is, and so if it's not, I'm also a super realist, so if it doesn't look exactly like what I'm trying to replicate, I struggle with that. The next would be the superwoman or superman. The ones having a hero complex. They have to save the day. They have to say yes to everything, and they struggle with saying no, and then you get overloaded, oversubscribed. And I struggle with this a little bit too, feeling like, well, if I say no, that shows weakness. I can't handle everything. And the truth be told, we can't handle everything. So that's not realistic. And that's going to cause more anxiety and more of that syndrome. The other one is the natural genius. These are people that do have an innate skill that's already in their DNA, that they are just really good at whatever it is. And what they do is then rely on that natural ability. And then what that leads to also is the lack of preparation for what they're about to do, because they just rely that they are really good at what they do. And that can cause them to fail because they are not prepared. The next one would be the soloist. So this is the lone wolf, go on their own, guns a-blazing. And early on my career, when I first started consulting 21 years ago, this came up on my review probably every year, is like, you're not a team player, you're trying to go it alone, you need to work with others. And that came out of, I think again, back to the perfectionist, it came out of, if you want something done right, you do it yourself. And I don't trust other people or rely on other people. Also, I can do it. And that just is going to build anxiety and also lead to failure a little bit more, eventually. The other one is the expert, the one who has to be the smartest person in the room, and they don't feel like they're good enough if they can't trump everybody in the room. And they have a strong fear of looking dumb. And that leads, again, back to anxiety and stress. And then an imposter syndrome that maybe they're faking it. Maybe they aren't the smartest person in the room. As I said before, the irony of it is that the more successful you are in your career, the more you may feel this way as we grow in our careers. Again, one of these things too is like back to the perfectionist is one of the issues is procrastination, putting things off out of fear that they won't have it completely necessary to their high standards or their boss's high standards. And oftentimes, it's also because, or if they do succeed, they feel like it's a fluke or it's luck that got them there. The other flip side coin of that is over preparation. This is like not feeling like you have everything right exactly, then you're kind of just stuck in the mud. This really reinforces the idea that the imposter needs to work extra hard and would not have succeeded otherwise. And then because they work so hard, often this leads to burnout, also a problem in our industry. I talked about the smartest person in the room thing. I didn't hold my hand up for that one, but I dealt with this in my early career as well. My first job, I started consulting right out of the gate. I was never, a practitioner. The company that I was with, we we did a lot of things, and I learned basically if it plugs in the wall or have blinky lights, I've done it. Anything you can think of. And I ended up in my team being the one that everyone came to. If they had a sticky problem that they couldn't figure out, they came to me. And inevitably, I usually could fix it or figure out a way to fix it. And they started calling me Neo around the office, which inflates your ego, right? And my boss, he got jealous and was like, "Hey, everybody, stop calling him Neo," because you have to not be afraid to not be the smartest person in the room. I've worked for, like I said, numerous consulting firms, and as I advanced in my career and worked for some really rock star companies like NCC Group and just all of them I listed, I found like I'm not, and I may be a senior person to a person who's frankly in that area smarter than I am. And we have to not be afraid. There's just too many areas for us to be the expert in everything here and be the smartest person in the room. But I mean, the more we learn and know, the more we realize we don't know. And that's what growing in our career is about, and trusting on other people. And that's where I learned, like, I don't know everything, and I can't know everything. That's impossible. The other thing that my lovely wife, who's actually sitting in the audience here, we talk about a lot is that kids growing their brains back in their 20s, right? And realizing that their parents weren't the morons they thought they were, and they don't know everything. So this is about growth and about learning that we don't know everything, and there are other people that know stuff, and so this is their coming of age. Failure. This goes back to all the things I said. People have a fear of failure. Failure is necessary. Failure is how we grow. There's a vast difference between intelligence and wisdom. Wisdom's gained by failing and learning from that failure. And knowing we will fail. It's just like in our industry, we say no more if we'll be breached. It's when we'll be breached. We will fail. And that's okay. But the most key part of that is fail fast. Fail fast, realize it, and learn from it. Grow. So that you don't fail again in that same manner. You may fail in another manner, but in that manner you won't fail. And so learn from those mistakes. One of the first podcasts when I got really deep into information security I listened to was one that was a recording of, many of you may know Adam Savage from Mythbusters. He gave a keynote speech at DEF CON 17, which was just mind-blowing to me. And one of the key statements I took out of that, it was a story of how, as he got into his industry of like movie, special effects and things like that, how he failed. So it was a whole talk on failure. It was superb. He said some key things, and one of the key things he said is, I don't trust people who haven't failed. And that's for various reasons. One, he said, they're liars. Everybody fails. Number two would be, they're going to throw you under the bus because they don't want to look like they failed. And number three is, they just don't have enough experience. Maybe they're new to the industry. Maybe they're new to this area. So that's why he says, I don't trust people who haven't failed. So, what now? Well, I mean, I've given a lot of stuff about this, but how do we work past it? How do we move on? The first thing is just start where you are. You know, we're at this place, acknowledge the way that you feel, and own it. But know that you're not alone. As I said in the beginning, 70% of folks, almost 3/4 of folks are going to experience this at some point in their career. So you're not alone. You don't need to be perfect. You don't. Again, you're going to fail. And you have to acknowledge that. Perfection is, frankly, it's impossible. It's an impossible ask, it's an impossible task. But if you're not perfect and you do fail, like I said before, learn from those mistakes so that you can improve and be better next time. Also, part of, like, especially the perfectionists and things, fear feedback and criticism. Ask for constructive criticism. Ask for it to come back so that you can get better at what you do, and excel. And that will help lower the anxiety, lower that feeling of imposter syndrome. My first consulting job, I had an incident with a CEO that they weren't doing things the way that I felt they should be doing, right? And so I talked to the CEO. It was like, blah, 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 you know, you're not doing this thing right. And he's like, well, no, I disagree. And I'm like, well, no. I was cocky, arrogant early in my career, and defensive. Hey, I was Neo, right? Well, I got back to the office. I got called in by my boss. And it's like, hey, did you argue with the CEO of one of our clients? I was like, no, I didn't argue. I just told him how it is. And he told me something that I remember to this day, and take heart in, especially in consulting. Perception is reality. If he felt you were arguing with him, you were arguing with him. It doesn't matter what you think or feel. So just keep in mind that people are going to perceive things their own way, and you know, move past it. Socrates gave a great quote that I want to read is, true knowledge exists in knowing that you know nothing. We don't know everything, and we never will. And so you just have to accept where you are. Another great quote by Neil deGrasse Tyson is, one of the great challenges in life is knowing enough to think you're right, but not knowing enough that you're wrong. And, you know, this is where the kids grow their brains back later. Figure that out. Also, stick to the facts. You know, understand where you are. Maybe take some time to reflect on your prior achievements. Don't forget where you came from. You have built a great career. You have done great things. So don't be too hard on yourself. Think about that. Also, something that I learned in my first consulting career, this is especially great for like when you have your annual review or whatever. If you get emails or accolades, say those, document those. It's really good for reflection, but also, like I said, great for job reviews to be able to send to your boss and to be able to talk back, because I mean, you don't really remember everything that might have happened or all the praises that you may have gotten. And sometimes in our industry, there isn't a lot of praise. thankless job. But when you get those, save them for your own edification, but also for, like I said, job reviews. Also, don't go it alone. You know, I mentioned 70%. There are other ones out there struggling. So realize when you need help early and you might be struggling. Don't be embarrassed to ask for help. I know that's a challenging thing, especially in our industry, is that there can be an ego problem. And so, but don't be embarrassed to ask for help, especially if you have a safe group to ask for help. Whether it's within your company, whether it's within this community, ask for help. Set your ego aside, because admittedly, we're all still learning, and we have to understand that. Additionally, recognize others' achievements. As I said, you can't know everything, especially in an expansive and ever-changing field as ours, where one day it's one thing and then a whole nother day it's something else. We're constantly learning, and recognize that. Don't compare apples to oranges. Just because someone's really good at like mobile pen testing, but you're really good at web app testing, you can't be down on yourself like, oh, I don't know everything. You know, understand it's apples and oranges. We all have different strengths and weaknesses. So don't be threatened by them. Embrace them. Leverage them. Use them for mentorship, for your own growth in learning. Also, things may not always be what they seem. It may be, you know, one way on the outside. You know, an example of this is like social media. People watch people's other families on social media. Oh, they're always on vacation. They're always having the perfect life, the perfect kids. It's not always the case. And so keep that in mind too, that maybe everyone else doesn't have it put together and you are not put together. So rely on that. Also, as I talked about feedback before, you provide valuable feedback. And I say valuable, constructive feedback, not just criticism, but something that they could use, take away, and learn from it, and then you know, become a stronger consultant or practitioner or whatever it may be. This applies to all of our life. It doesn't have to just be security industry. Also something that as I became a people manager, and even probably before a people manager, praise them personally, lift them up. But also what I try to do is, you know, if I hear something good or I see something good that some individual is doing well, I'll send an email to them, usually CCing their managers, so that they get the recognition that, again, in the thankless career we sometimes won't get, and will help them on their job reviews. So, and with that, be specific on what they did very well. Decide to thrive. So don't get stuck in the mud. You know, just, that's the whole point of this, is move on from it. It's a state of mind. Often as we tell our kids, we can't control all the circumstances, but we can control how we react to those circumstances. So it's not always going to go your way, and that may be not your fault, and may be out of your control, but you decide how you want to internalize that and how you want to handle that. You decide how we respond. And believe in yourself. I mean, you made it to where you are for various reasons. Believe in yourself. So give yourself your own little pep talk. Lastly, connect with other imposters. I use air quotes around that. imposters. Because as I said again, 70% feel the same way you do. And so don't be afraid to reach out. Seek out others who have the same way of feeling, and don't feel ashamed, because you're in a big crowd of people that feel likely the same way you do, at least at some point, and they can remember and relate. So reach out if you have any of these concerns or feelings. With that, I'll take questions. Questions? Comments? Okay. That is it. Okay. Well, so the question was, how do you provide that constructive feedback to someone without them feeling offended? There's multi-parts to that. One is, as I mentioned before, part of that's on them if they feel that way. So you can't be afraid to provide that constructive feedback. And not everyone is going to take it well the first time, or the second time, or the third time, or whatever. But they may reflect on it, maybe years later, and be like, man, she was right. You know, I am seeing a pattern. I do need to change this. So don't be afraid to do that, because you may offend someone. And that's why I also add that clarifier, valuable or constructive. If you're just griping at someone just to gripe at them, that's not constructive. Also come with a recommendation. People who work for me, I tell them, don't come to me with a problem with just the problem. Come to me with one, maybe two, maybe three solutions that you recommend. So if you're giving constructive criticism, don't just criticize. Maybe give them some helpful recommendations that they could do to modify that behavior or whatever it is, and not make that mistake in the future. One of the interview questions I love to ask when I'm interviewing people is, tell me about a project or time where something went horribly wrong. And what did you learn from it? How did you handle it? How did you, if it was a client-facing thing, how did you, assuage their concerns? And that is for a very good reason that I asked that tricky question, because that goes back to the Adam Savage quote, I don't trust people who haven't failed. If they can't name a time, and I tell them it doesn't have to be in your work career, it doesn't have to be even security related. I tell them about a time, because I want them to be honest, I want to see their honesty, and I want to gauge where they are on that list of concerns that Adam Savage had. And I want to see that they had growth, that they learned something from it and aren't going to repeat that task in the future. So that's why I asked that question. Does that answer your question? Okay. Anything else? Yeah. Oh, that's a very good question. The question was, any tips on recognize when others might be having imposter syndrome and helping them through it? I would reflect back to probably this slide, is recognizing the ways that people might pigeonhole themselves into this, right? Look for the lone wolf. Look for the perfectionist who, is not getting things done because they can't get it perfect. Just, look through this list, see, look for the person who you ask stuff for and then just never say no. And I think that would be a good way to identify those and maybe gently suggest some things that might help from the list that I gave later on how to make it better. Like you might even seek those people out and say, you reach out to them and say, hey, I'm suffering from this. You know, you make yourself vulnerable. And then reciprocity, they might then come back and relate to a time that they felt that way too. Anything else? Okay. Well, thank you very much.